It's always nice for me to see third-party brands bringing out lenses for the L mount, and whenever I get the chance to, I will always say yes to trying them out. A lot of people associate the L mount system as being too expensive or not having enough variation when it comes to lens options, but I genuinely believe that it's now shaping up to be a very diverse and practical ecosystem with many new releases from Panasonic, Sigma and other third-party brands in the last year. In today's video, I'll be talking about a lens that was sent out to me from a company called Brightin Star, their fully manual 50mm F0.95 prime for the L mount. First of all, like any lens review, let's start off with the overall build quality of this lens. It's heavy, very heavy. Far heavier than the MKii 50mm F1.2 I tested a while back, and of course the Panasonic 50mm F1.8. It's a full metal construction though, and I was pretty pleased with the build quality of it. I really like the yellow and red markings on the body of the lens, and I think it's actually very reminiscent of the Leica colour scheme that they have going on. There is a built-in metal lens hood that you can't actually remove, and it just slides up into place and then down again if you don't need to use it. While I appreciate the innovation, I actually would have preferred it if the lens hood was a standalone item that you could just attach like all other lenses. Both the focus ring and aperture ring are really stiff on my copy of the lens, and that stands to be one of my biggest complaints about the lens, but I'll get more onto that a bit later. I was actually pleasantly surprised by the image quality of this lens. It's definitely adequately sharp for both photo and video. I found that it handled flaring pretty well, and the chromatic aberration was very controlled, at least from the images that I've seen from it. Despite being a manual focus only lens, I actually found it to be quite easy to now focus with, and the manual focus aspect didn't really slow me down too much. Since most of us L mount shooters don't use air for video shooting anyways, it definitely shouldn't be an issue and could help you save a few pennies if you are looking for a fast 50mm prime lens for your kit. My biggest complaint, as I was saying earlier, is the usability of this lens. Since the focus ring is quite stiff and has a lot of resistance to it, I found that this lens with a servo focus motor on my gimbal raised a lot of issues with the focus gears pushing the motor away from the body of the lens. It also meant that I couldn't perform any quick focus pulls or rack focus without servo focus motor getting jammed or disconnected from the lens focus wheel. This is a huge shame because otherwise this lens would have been a great option for gimbal shooters, but needless to say I was still able to get some pretty nice footage on the gimbal, but the focus ring issue definitely is something that would stop me from picking up this lens and using it more often. The MKii 50mm I reviewed a while back has a much smoother and more dampened focus ring, so I'd actually say I prefer that about the MKii option. The aperture ring on this lens is also very stiff, as I said earlier, and it makes changing the aperture really difficult once the camera is all rigged up. Of course, the stiffness of the aperture ring does mean that you'd never actually accidentally knock your aperture up or down, but it also means that changing your aperture becomes an absolute mission. Like most cheap primes that I've tested, the image does become a little bit soft when you shoot wide open and shoot at the largest aperture, but I think anything above 1.4 on this particular lens is more than usable, and that's where I found myself staying. You also have to remember how difficult it becomes to focus at apertures lower than f1.8 on a full frame camera, so that in itself should make you think twice about shooting wide open when you are pulling focus manually. Price wise, you can pick up this lens for around £350 here in the UK or under $400 in the US, but prices do vary a little bit on this lens depending on where you look for it though, so definitely dig around to find the best price for it. Would I recommend this lens? If I'm being honest, probably not. As much as I think the image quality punches above the price point, I definitely think the setbacks on usability make it a hard one for me to recommend to you guys. If there was a way to make the focus ring looser and the aperture ring smoother, then I'd be more than likely to sing its praises, but since my copy proved to be a pain to use with a servo focus motor and also with a handheld rig, it sadly doesn't get my stamp of approval. It's a shame because like I said, the image quality is there, but if your gear isn't working harmoniously with everything else, then you have a big problem on your hands when you're actually out shooting. So yeah, anyway, I hope you guys found this video somewhat useful, entertaining or interesting, and if you did then please subscribe to the channel because I do make a lot of content here surrounding the Panasonic S5 and L mount ecosystem in general, so if that's your thing then this channel will be for you. So yeah, thanks again for watching and hopefully I shall see you in the next one.